start looking at those around you that you started with either in school or wherever, and you wonder why you are either stagnant or you're not moving at a fast pace as compared to your peers, but that doesn't mean that you're not moving. If you had to look at that same grid, I call it a graph, if you had to look at it within a 10-year period as compared to just 1 year, you'll see that there's actually movement. But if you look at just 1 year, it's probably a straight line, so that's just some nuggets.
You've just stepped into An Empty Street, a podcast where we casually engage in difficult conversations about relationships, wealth, and health. We are just three curious gentlemen who ask questions almost about everything, and our aim is to find answers from others and within ourselves. We sit down every week to explore unaltered conversations. So let's walk the talk together, and welcome to the Empty Street Podcast.
All right. We are moving on to the second part of our conversation. We've got the guys, the podcast, Empty Street Podcast. Empty Street Podcast, you can follow them on YouTube. I met these guys at a conference. Well, I was having a conversation with the author in Victoria, and I heard that they are podcasters. So I didn't ask them. I went and checked out their site. And I enjoy the kind of conversations that they are having. And I thought it's important to bring them in to be part of today. But also, as young people, we know we see some want to start platforms and channels, and so you can ask certain questions towards the end. But we're going to get into that session. And then after this, we're celebrating with music. I'll be sharing, I call it the workshop. Today I'll be sharing original material that some you've never heard before, and some you have heard but it's not recorded yet. So it's going to be a special session. Stick around. But for now, we're going to cross over to the gents. Let's give them a round of applause.
As I introduced myself earlier on, my name is Nceba. And I'm 1/3 of the Empty Street Podcast, and I'll just let the other guys introduce themselves, and then we can get going.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sisonke. You might call me SK. I'm the part of the three. I don't know if I should say I'm the host or the co-host, but yeah, part of the gents. And that is Ali right there. And he's also part of us. So before we start, I just want us to, I see some people haven't finished eating, but I just want us to do a little exercise. Just a quick icebreaker. I want everyone to do as I do. Nah? So let's go like this. Just stretch. And then like this. And then like this. And then hold your hands close. Okay? And then, in count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you'll figure that one out when you get home. So, we are the Empty Street Podcast. We touch on conversations that are never touched on, and we like to create this platform for people to listen to share the conversations with everyone. And most of the times, this is our first time actually shooting this podcast with people actually like as an audience. So we are always addressing the camera every time we are shooting our episodes. So today, we are not going to be talking to you guys, but we are going to be talking with you. So you'll be part of this conversation as well. So I'll pass on to Nceba to start.
Thanks, man. So, I mean, as we've already heard from our panel of professionals, I would assume most of the young people here are career driven and want to actually experience a different side to just being a student, right? And our story basically started. So we found this podcast only came in later in life, but we also professionals in our own right, and we started knowing each other from campus days, you know. But what I just want to say is, it's not always within those spaces where you're in high school or where you're in varsity where you actually know what you're going to do, you know. A perfect example would be this podcast, for instance. It happened years after we had already graduated from varsity and all of that, but it didn't stop us from not wanting to pursue it, even though we had careers going on the side as well. And it's also another way of just touching on the things you enjoy doing on your part-time, because we have 9 to 5s every week, Monday to Friday. You Nceba, and then what do you do on your spare time? Do you hang around with your friends? Use that time that you have with it, whether it's an hour or two, because most of our sessions don't even last like 2 hours. And what our guests normally walk away with is that they feel so much better than how they felt coming in. And it's something we always have. It's closed. It's conversations we have amongst closed doors. You know, maybe a conversation you have with a friend of yours, but we're too scared to actually have them out in the open like this, for instance. You know, because we're probably scared someone might judge you on what you're saying or your opinions on the matter. So my advice is just stay on what you're good at. Those things actually come in handy later in life. And don't be limited by the resources you have. As you can see, we've set up phones. There's no heavy equipment going on here. It's just our phones, and we're just using that to actually just document what we have, you know, because it's conversations we have off camera, but we just chose to have them on camera just so that we can share the experience with other people as well, you know. So yeah, but I'll just let Ali continue that conversation.
Okay. Otherwise, in the right, yeah. So as Ngabi has introduced me, my name is Ali Pava, and first thing first, we start to thank to Siposeti for giving us a platform which is called Mhlala. It's like face to face, which is SK has mentioned, is something I haven't done before, and it's our first time. Somehow, it's not a normal day, so corner, but at the end of the day, we're going to do it either way, all right? So as never be a submission, we start in high scale, Eva City. Then we reached the podcast. Then we started it from Eva City. I think it would be a totally different story from what it is now. But at the end of the day, we're grateful that we started at the end of the day. Is it after varsity or even before? Because when we look at how we could be back then, we see that the impact that was going to make was going to be a lot. But at the end of the day, the impact is still there even now. So start wasting any time. I think we're just going to start with the podcast. As SK has mentioned, we're going to have this show with you guys. We're not going to just be us talking too much, but we're going to talk, all of us, getting to know each other, advising each other. As the motto of our podcast, this is what we always say. We're going to learn from each other. You're going to learn from us. We're going to learn from you. So at the end of the day, we're going to grow each other. Yeah.
Okay, so with the previous session, we had we had professionals, and I don't remember who mentioned it. I think it was you who mentioned that sometimes your passions come after you, they chase you, and sometimes some people go after what they love. So I have a friend. Okay, so I have a friend who doesn't know what to do with their life. He doesn't have any skill, he doesn't have any passions, he doesn't have any interest, but he'd like to be something or to do something in his life. So I realized that there are some people who are like that, who don't know what to do with their lives. So I always advise people that I come across with. I mean, I'm not an expert in anything, but I observe a lot and I like to study people. So if there is someone like that in this room who doesn't know what to do with their life, or who doesn't have any interest or passions, like I'd make an example with me. I don't have any skills, I don't have any talent, but I like to get my hands dirty all the time. So there's this quote that says, "Jack of all trades is the master of none." And that's basically what I've been doing all my life, becoming a jack of all trades. And I later realized that in my journey of trying to find out what actually I'll be interested in, there are some things that I can be able to perfect or master. And some people from outside would say, "Oh, you're so talented in this." For instance, at some point in my life, I was a magician doing magic tricks. So the warm-up we did was part of the magic tricks I once did. So that was not my talent in anyhow, but it's something that I just found out. Oh, there's some people who can do this. Let me find out how I can do it. So what I would encourage people is get your hands dirty all the time. And so I later find out that the quote that says "Jack of all trades is the master of none" is incomplete. Actually, the complete quote is "Jack of all trades is the master of none," and oftentimes better than the master of one. So that's just what I wanted to share with you guys.
Just adding on to what SK was saying about if you are stuck in a place where you feel like you don't have any talents or anything you know that you're good at. As I had already mentioned earlier on, that having just the resources around you, you know, maybe if you're a school kid, you probably have Nceba said, yeah, these are resources that he's giving out actually, you know. Use it to journal your life, to write down the ideas you have. We spoke about vision boards, I think. You can take out pieces of paper from this exact same book, put them on your wall, and just paint the picture that you see in your head. You know, because sometimes we function way better when we can envision what we actually want in life. You know, so I would encourage us to just be more visual with our dreams. And the question I had posed the panelists earlier about silencing our dreams, don't let people like stand in your way of what you want to achieve, because you're gonna come across people like that. You know, there's people that either don't align with what you want and want you to align with what they actually chasing. You know, but if you are certain of what you want, then stick to that, no matter whether that person is your best friend or not. You know, because sometimes we dwell on having the support, and then we forget about ourselves as well, and that in the long run affects us, because we start comparing. I think someone mentioned here that you start looking at those around you that you started with either in school or wherever, and you wonder why you are either stagnant or you're not moving at a fast pace as compared to your peers. You know, but that doesn't mean that you're not moving. If you had to look at that same grid, I call it a graph, if you had to look at it within a 10-year period as compared to just 1 year, you'll see that there's actually movement. But if you look at just 1 year, it's probably a straight line, you know. So that's just some nuggets I'd like to just throw in as well there.
Bona abantu basangena sibanikeza ithuba bahlale phansi okhombisa izandla. And Nceba kulento ayimentionayo where we talk about passion. So there's this thing that SK once showed me. It's called is a Chinese method on how to find your purpose. So it's called the Ikigai. I don't know if you guys know it or yes. You know it? You've seen it? Okay. So there's actually a book about it. So this is what the Ikigai does. So it helps you to find your own purpose. So how do you find it? So it's a circle, then you draw it. I don't know, only if it was a way to guys to show it so that we do it practical. It was going to be simple. But the main purpose behind it is for you to find what you're good at and what you're good at, people can pay you for that, right? So you use what you're good at, can be anything, then you use that to develop the skill, then you monetize that. You get me? So let me just make a typical example. For instance, like a podcast. So one thing that we realize is that we usually have a conversation. Like what we say on the intro is like unaltered conversation, right? So those conversation that we used to have on a closed camera, then now we thought, okay, we can take this and use it in a form of we record, then we upload this onto YouTube, then from there we monetize that. Also, that is part of what using what you're good at, and you improve it while you keep on just talking and also engage in different topics. Then you get to grow, you get to learn from one another. Then from there you monetize that. Once you monetize that, then you get to make your extra incomes without your 9 to 5, right? So that's one of the things that when we talk about what most we should focus on is the skill more than just a career, because a skill at the same time can save a lot of people. Take for instance a musician, that's a skill, but if you don't nurture it, it doesn't fit you, because the only thing that you need to do is just to nurture whatever you have. Once you keep on nurturing it, then it becomes the food on your table, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there are some people in our society, like the rebels, who don't want to sit in class and be told that in order for you to make it in this life, you should be learning this book, like following this certain curriculum. There's those rebels in our society, and we all know them. And unfortunately, some of them we find them in jail, and some of them we find them in the streets. And so, for those kind of people who feel trapped in a classroom, what I would say if I would get an opportunity to sit in front of them is, in the world that we live in right now, information is at our fingertips. Yeah. Our devices have the world in them, but we don't realize it. And not to throw shade on our PR guy, but these are the guys that manipulate us to focus on the things that are not so important that can build our lives. But on your side, it's for a good cause. So the information that's on YouTube, for example, is equal to the information, or even more than the information you can get from one textbook or a certain an entire semester from university. And what I can advise is, like what Ali was saying about monetizing your skills, become an asset. By becoming an asset, you not only wait for someone to employ you. I mean, we know the state of our country. We know that graduates are sitting outside now in the sun. Graduates are going up and down. The emotional turmoil of getting the rejected application. I mean, if you build yourself to become an asset, you are able to pitch to people. Basically, for example, this podcast. Ali mentioned monetizing this podcast. By the way, we're not making any money from this podcast as yet. But what we are doing with this podcast is we are building a community of people. There's a guy, Calvin Kelly. He says that you only need 1,000 true fans. So by building this podcast, who knows, we might get 1,000 people who are our true fans. And if we say that, okay, we have this event where we'll be sitting like this and talking, and those people might be willing to actually invest some cash in that event for us to be able to make it possible. So that's one of the things that I mean to say when I'm saying make yourself an asset. And with, as we never mentioned, we just have our cell phones, the cell phones we have, and probably the cell phones you guys have. We are shooting them and uploading them on YouTube. We don't need any heavy equipment, any heavy cameras, because people are consuming content from their screens. So there's no need for a bigger camera so that you can be able to do whatever you want to do. So you can just start there.
Just to add on to what SK was saying, in terms of just our experience with the whole podcast thing and what he was saying about us not making any money from this. So that's another thing that sometimes I've realized tends to hinder our progress, right? If you're not seeing any progress, so to say, then we defeated and we feel like nothing's happening. But those are the times when you should actually be applying consistency. You know, since we've started, we have not missed one single week where we haven't produced content, you know, and you guys are like the young generation is the generation that's more focused on online activity and surfing the internet and all of that. You guys should be actually exploiting all of these things, but you're so focused on seeing the numbers come in today that you forget that it's like it's a trajectory. You know, it doesn't all happen overnight, and you just need to put in the work, and eventually everything else will fall in line. You know, but put in the work, put in the hours, and soon enough, everything you'll reap the rewards of your hard labor, basically. But I don't think we should be taking up much more of your time. I don't know if we should be having the Q&A now, or just a few questions that maybe you guys might want to find out or anything.
Yeah,
like
whether
that.
you are pursuing something or you want to start something or you are basically stuck where you are, just about any question about what we just covered on, we'll be glad to answer any of those questions.
Thank you very much. My question is going to be very short and straight. Mine is, I don't know, is it advisable for somebody who is shy to be in the podcast and stuff? Because it seems almost a lot of people are doing it, but then I wonder if someone has a shy personality, would you say it's advisable that they can pursue things to do in podcast?
Should I go?
Okay, it wouldn't be just podcast, but you mean in front of a camera, right? I'm actually shy, by the way, and it is advisable because what you can learn from being in front of the camera is that you speak to imaginary people. Basically, it's just you and your phone. There's no one there, so maybe you should be more comfortable with that. But you can get anxiety from thinking that you should press that publish button or post button, right? But here's what I can tell you, and why I encourage people who consider themselves as shy to push themselves to be in front of the camera. It's because that we deal with people on a daily, and no matter where you go or whatever you're pursuing in your life, you will need people, whether to help you with your private life or to help you, for instance, if you are building a business, you need to speak to people, right? So if you get that practice run in front of your screen, you'll be able to speak to people when you actually meet them. In crowds like this, like small crowds like this, you'll be able to get that confidence. Several times, so you don't have to so that's why I encourage it. You'll be able to have better communication skills, because in front of the camera, for instance, when because I'm the one editing this podcast, so I usually look at myself and I study people's body languages. I get to see body language. Nceba, I get to see body language Ali, and my body language as well. So I become conscious now when I'm speaking with you, or I shouldn't be tapping like this because I'm gonna distract people. So you get to learn things like that. So I definitely do advise that if you're shy, you do it as in yesterday?
Yeah, and to add on that, right? So there was this challenge that we once took that, okay, so each and every day, if maybe you can try to talk to a stranger, I think there is something that you can win over yourself. So, well, there are certain things that we need to overcome. It's like saying you're shy. It can be part of your personality, but if you can tell yourself that this is part of the personality that I want to overcome, that's simple. First thing first, face one person that you have never spoke to. Each and every day, you'll see there's something that will be done. So this is what we use. So normally I take a text, maybe say, as we come here, we use a text. So this is what I did. So every day when I sit next to someone, they will never leave. If they will never leave, right, without me saying something to them or having a conversation. And a conversation can be about anything. Can be about the seat. Can be why do you carry your phone like that? Just to start a conversation. Can be about anything, right? And we had more challenge about that. This is what happened in the last 8 weeks. So this is what we did. Normally we usually to have a conversation like this, right? Where it's just us or maybe a guest. So this is what we do. All the questions that we always pose to ourselves, then we talk about, then we answer. We took the same question to the street, as we call ourselves the Empty Street Podcast, right? So we took the same question to the street, to people now to answer the same question that we've been answering, so that as we are saying that we want to learn from other people as well. So what we learn from there is that as we approach each and every person, we meet individuals with different personalities, right? They give us, this person will give a totally different attitude. Then we're like, oh. So sometimes how you react towards that is totally different. And maybe if it's totally different from SK, from Nceba, and totally Indian, but we get to learn how to control even your temper. If someone you get a rejection, we get to reject it each and every day. So how do you deal with that? So it also helps. So if you're shy, try by so much to speak to people.
Question.
I'm one of the friends, guys. I want to know, since you touched on anxiety, so how do you guys deal with comments, episodes that you post which are opposing the topic that you guys you are tackling, and then how you also deep dive in that topic? The after effect, because I think many of the shy young ones here, they have that anxiety to click that post or publish button because you worry, especially with the rated mental health that we got in our society. So how can maybe you tell them with such comments as opposite, and how can you help them to also have that technique to deal with such?
Okay.
Thank you. So basically, sometimes what we would tend to do is we actually advise people to comment, right? Because we want to actually open it up to, it should be a platform for anyone to engage in, right? And we want to feed off of those comments and then make it an actual dialogue. So let's talk about it. Because we will obviously always have different opinions over anything. You know, I might ask her a question based on a topic I probably think differently about. And that's just how life is. But I think sometimes I guess it depends on whether it's constructive or deconstructive type of criticism on what we are putting out there, you know. And most of the time we tend to think what we're putting out is actually for a good cause, you know. So in most of the cases, the comments that we get back are probably based off of it being a good conversation, but maybe include a different, maybe a profession within that field or within that topic, or add in a female perspective and all of those things. So it helps us then go back into the drawing board and say, okay, for our next topic, maybe we can introduce a female perspective because there's a crowd that might relate to her side of thinking, you know. And so it goes with, even with if you're a kid, or if you scared that if I publish my content, whether it be a video of you dancing or whatever it is, and you're scared of the people that might comment on it, you also have the option of switching off those comments, you know, because it's a vicious world, especially online, and you are not trained to actually handle all of that backlash. So the easiest thing I would say is switch off those comments unless you really need any like validation, which is not really what we should be chasing, but just doing what you feel makes you happy, you know.
And so you already answered the question about how create content can add to us. Has any of the content you create gotten you to topic?
It's like
Work through it. How big you
take
are.
it.
Into trouble? No, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But not to say that we don't touch on controversial topics. Yes, it's just people don't engage. It's like you put something out there to see. It's like a fish. If you go into a pond and you put something out there to see a fish, people will actually catch. But most of the time, it's either people are scared to put out their comments so other people can read them, or it's they don't understand the concept well enough to actually engage in that conversation. But most of the time, it's conversations we have around like corners, behind closed doors, so they'll always be controversial or thought-provoking, you know. But we also need just the third party to also just get into that conversation to make it a back and forth dialogue.
I think we once had one that got us into trouble. I think so. Especially the first episode ever we uploaded. That one got us into trouble. Not only with people, but people around us. That one was the problem, because the first episode ever, it was about the first date. Who pays on the first date? So what was about that? So we said a lot of things on that episode. Those were personal things. So to our partners that were our partners during that time. So
Did you ring it?
so you see the views now were like, whatever you just said there is not how you do things, or this is how you think about things. You understand? So it was like, okay, to me you're pretending, but somehow when you're in front of that camera, no, you just said what you wanted. You've been wanted to say that. So now that one got us into trouble, especially the first one. But the day we decided to upload it, we were like, so yeah, that one, I think that's the first episode ever. The next nigga problem, but until today we don't regret what we said. We said it and that was that.
Yeah, and I think in the future, how we deal with trouble. I'm not sure which trouble you're referring to, like being cancelled and stuff. Or I think if we would come across that kind of trouble, it would be a matter of, let's sit down, let's have the conversations. These are my views because, and these are your views because, and try to find a common ground. I think that is how we do it.
Yeah.
Hi guys.
Hi.
I wanted to know, I'm a huge follower of podcasts. So it's a growing industry, especially on YouTube.
Yeah.
So if you're a person who wants to start a podcast channel, how do you ensure that the content that you're putting on is unique?
Is what?
Unique.
Or unique?
Because we see like the controversial topics, most people usually go for that because they find
Clickbait.
Clickbait.
It's clickbait.
Yeah.
So how do you ensure that if I want to start a podcast, like how do I then get new, fresh, like content?
Thanks. I think maybe for one is knowing what you actually want to put out there, like knowing what you're good at, or whatever it is. It's a product basically, right? And you need to know what product it is you want to sell to people, whether it be a burger, a cool drink, or whatever, right? And then from that, you then establish your market as to what kind of audience will enjoy this kind of content, right? And from there, you just presenting that content in the most highest quality you possibly can. You know, as much as these are phones, if you had to go onto any of our episodes, you wouldn't say that. You know, from the thumbnail to the actual footage, just whatever. Like, it's not always easy because we don't all have like good phones, you know. But if you can, or if you're able to, find someone that can help you with either a video or whatever the case is, or your thumbnails, just to actually like enhance the like how your product looks. And then you were mentioning what people also use controversial topics or thumbnails or whatever the case is. That's obviously clickbait, you know. And then when you land onto that episode or that video, it turns out it's not even close to what the title said. You know, that was just to get you there, and that's for numbers. So we're not all about the numbers, you know. For us, it's if it lands on one ear, the impact has been made, you know. The numbers and all of that can come later on because it's something that's gonna sit on there. It's online, you know. It's on the cloud. It's never gonna come down unless someone shuts down the YouTube server. So whenever 10 years from now, someone can still refer to that, and they can still consume that content. So that's why we actually want to put out content that's worth looking at or watching, whether it's 10 years or 15 years down the line, and not what kind of content do they make? You're switching phones and all of those kind of things. Yeah. That's not something that you can relate to 10 years from now, you know. So it's always trying to make an impact towards the next person that might come across your content. I don't know if that like kind of answers some of your questions or not.
It's gone.
Yeah, I think Escom did the things.
Is it load shedding?
We'll have to cut it short, yeah. So we'll have to cut it short. But we are open for any conversation that might happen after this here.
A generator.
Question: How do you ensure that you keep the relationships amongst you, or the relationship if it's in the Slangana, maybe come and swim for 1 hour?
Gotta go.
So
should I go?
So I think the nature of how this podcast started, like, sort of makes us put it in front all the time, like no matter our differences, which we don't have a lot of differences, but the fact that we always put the podcast first, we know what has to be done. We always show up to shoot the podcast or do whatever that has to be done, no matter the troubles that we are facing or whatever we have to deal with on the side. But we make sure that the podcast is done. And it actually even doesn't feel like work anymore. It feels like, okay, we're just having these conversations. It so happens that there's cameras, and then that's it.
Actually, to add to that, right? This is like our baby, right? So your baby doesn't matter. You good, you bad. When the baby is hungry, the baby needs to eat. So that's how we treat it. At the end of the day, we need to work.
That's it.
I think that's
Yeah.
I think from us, I think that's it. But how we normally close after every episode that we shoot is we normally have like a sign out that we normally have. I don't know, these are not as us.
Yeah, continue.
So as we always say, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and take care of your pockets. This is the Empty Street Podcast, and we're signing out. Thank you.